To Bangladesh now, where there have been days of violent clashes between police and students protesting a government job quota system. More than 100 people have been killed, and the government has ordered a curfew and deployed military forces. Now, a Deutsche Welle investigation has revealed that vehicles with UN markings have been deployed in the crackdown. The United Nations has called the violence against student protesters shocking and unacceptable. And this footage, monitored by DW's investigations unit, clearly shows UN markings on armored personnel vehicles that are being used against the demonstrations. Now, these pictures show similar vehicles with regular Bangladesh army markings. The investigation comes after rights groups questioned Bangladesh's involvement in a number of peace missions. A DW probe in May showed that Bangladesh had deployed officers implicated in cases of torture and killings as UN peacekeepers. And I'm very pleased to welcome Birgitte Schulke from DW's investigative unit, who recently revealed how suspected human rights abusers from Bangladesh were deployed on those UN peace missions. Let's start with this investigation into the insignia on these vehicles. Just to be clear, it doesn't seem like these are actually vehicles that have been sent by the UN to Bangladesh, right?
No, not at all. And that might be the problem. To understand how the vehicles with the insignia of the UN could end up there in the midst of the protests, we have to understand that Bangladesh, as a troop contributing country, not only contributes troops, but also equipment to the UN. So Bangladesh is the third biggest contributors to UN peace missions, and so they have a lot of these sort of vehicles with UN insignia in their stock. Actually, when we went there to shoot, to film in Bangladesh for our latest investigation, we saw a lot of these sort of vehicles with UN insignia on the UN training ground in Bangladesh, close to the capital Dhaka.
It's pretty remarkable to see these vehicles on the streets of Dhaka with the Bangladesh military. Has there been reaction from the United Nations to this?
For the UN, it's obviously a huge issue that these vehicles with the UN insignia were in the midst of a brutal crackdown on demonstrators, which left many, many young people dead, right? And in a briefing yesterday, the UN spokesperson made it very clear that the forces, the UN forces and the UN insignia can only be used in mandated UN peace missions. That's what he had to say.
Our colleagues on the ground in Bangladesh have seen reports of disturbing reports of UN-marked vehicles that may have been used during the developments we've seen in Bangladesh over the last few days. It's important for us to stress that UN troop and police contributing countries are to use UN insignia and equipment marked with this insignia only when they are performing mandated tasks as part of a UN peacekeeping or UN political mission and within the context of the deployment of any UN mission.
So the UN is alerted, and this comes to a time where the contribution of Bangladesh to UN peacekeeping missions is under huge criticism. Especially human rights groups are demanding to exclude Bangladesh from UN missions because of their bad human rights track record.
And do you think there could be any consequences here for Bangladesh coming out of this?
I mean, that's definitely something human rights groups would hope for, right? But in the last years, the UN peacekeeping has been very cautious to openly criticize Bangladesh. I mean, they are the third biggest troop contributor, and we saw the same after our investigation, which revealed that members of a special unit which is responsible for huge human rights violations inside of Bangladesh were awarded with these lucrative UN peace missions, especially two deputy directors of the infamous intelligence unit of who runs a huge network of torture cells. So After our investigation was published, UN said, yeah, they would investigate the matter, but until now, nothing has happened. So I think the UN is in a dilemma because they don't want to criticize Bangladesh openly because they are huge contributors to troop, and they, as sources tell us, have often said they would pull back all their troops if the UN starts criticizing them too much.
Definitely a difficult political situation there. Well, thank you so much for your reporting on this. That is DW's Brigitte Schulke. Very much appreciate your insights here in the studio.